Hi everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Today we are looking at a late model Homelite Super 2. This one is a UT10696. They had a lot of versions of this that went up through about a 10696-E. I think they all had the one thing in common, and that was where the oil pump is mounted. It's right here on the back side of the carburetor. So this extra block, this nylon tan colored block there, is a vacuum block, and it pulses a diaphragm oiler. That's the pump body right there. So similar in theory to the way it works that an old Super 2 would have. Downside to this is the most complicated hose setup that one of these little guys has ever had. And this one has the primer bulb that mounts right over here, so that's an extra layer of hoses that we've got to wrap around. So I thought I'd go through each one of these and just kind of detail what's going on here. So the fuel tank has two hoses. You want the bottom hose to be your fuel inlet to the carburetor. That's the main draw. That's where it gets its fuel from to run. And that's the line that you would put your filter on. The upper hose is the primer bulb return line. So the theory with the primer bulb is you're pulling fuel through the carburetor. Goes into the bulb and then discharges through the tank. The idea with primer is to fill the carburetor with gas. I didn't replace this hose just yet because it was formed and it held the bulb out of the way, but it will get replaced as well. The oil pump accounts for the remaining hose disaster that you've got here. The lower hose is again your pickup, and that will go to the lower port on the oil pump body, or I should say the port that's closest to the diaphragm. So the diaphragm will pulse up, that'll pull oil in, and when the spring pushes it back down, it's going to push oil out that discharge hose, and I guess I'll have to spin this around, and down to the discharge point on the bar mount pad. It's a pressurized oil tank, so this upper hose goes from the block here that receives a pulse from the crankcase as the engine turns over, and that's where your duckbill valve goes. Very important that you have that. If you don't, two things will happen. One, your oiler will not work, and two, if that duckbill valve is not on the end properly, there's a high likelihood when you tilt the saw running that it's going to suck oil back into the crankcase, and while you won't have a problem with mosquitoes, it's not going to run real well. So anyhow, that's a pretty good detailing of how you route one of these when it has a carburetor mounted oil pump. Not super bad, but what I would recommend is leave your old hoses in place and replace them one at a time. Use good hose. Any good auto parts store, Napa, CarQuest, O'Reilly's, even most of your local hardware stores that carry any kind of outdoor power equipment can get you Tygon or a good equivalent fuel hose. Take a sample of your old stuff in and they can match it up. But you want something with a good thick wall and something that's rated for use with gas, oil, and it's going to remain flexible. Don't get fish tank clear hose that you can buy at Walmart, because that stuff will turn hard and crack out almost immediately. It's not worth it. It's too much work to replace this stuff. So hopefully this will help you guys if you got one of these torn apart. Help you go through it. It's not as bad as it looks.